Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your support. Well friends, in today's video, I have totally stepped out of my comfort zone. And I can't wait to show you what I've done. So let's get started. So my first project is a bottle that I thrifted recently. And it actually has a beautiful glass top that has a cork on it. But I'm not going to be using it for this video. And I specifically chose it for the design in the bottle where it kind of has those little points coming down in the front. I painted it with Dixie Belle Slick Stick, which helps the paint to adhere a lot better to the glass. And then after it dried, I painted it with Waverly's chalk paint in the color ink. Put it all over and I put a couple coats on it. So I'm going to start off with the new mold called Invitation Only. And I'm going to be making the little bulldog out of resin. And I use Amazing Casting Resin. And it has two parts. Part A is clear. Part B is kind of yellowy. You stir it together and then it turns cloudy. And then when it turns clear, you need to be ready to pour it in the mold because it sets up really quick. Now, I've made enough, I think at this point, to maybe go ahead and make one for the little deer above it for later. So now I'm just taking some gold floral wire and I'm just kind of making several little strands of it. And then I take that one last strand and wrap around it really tight. And then it's just going to be one really strong piece of wire. And you've seen me done this before in a video with my other bottles that I've done. And I don't have any thicker wire. That's why I use that thinner wire. So that mold has just barely started setting up. So I put that wire down into that mold. And then I take like a little toothpick to push it down just a little bit more. And I hold on to that for just a little bit. Once it's all set up, then I pop it out. Now I'm making some more resin because I'm going to make this a double-sided mold. And once again, it's equal parts of part A and part B. And it just sets up so fast. And I love working with it. And it's so strong. And it's good and permanent. And it's not going to break later on. And I pour that into the mold. But this time, I try not to pour it all the way up to that micro rim because now what I'm going to do is, now I'm doing the little deer. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first mold that has the gold wire in it and I turn it over and I lay it on top and then I just kind of hold on to it for just a little while. And then some of it does kind of ooze out just a little bit. But as soon as I take it out, I go ahead and trim off that little extra part because right then it's still soft. If I waited till later, it would be too hard and I would have to sand it off. Now I'm just going to be painting both sides once again with Waverly's chalk paint in the color ink. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of lay it off to the side and stick it in like another bottle so it has plenty of time to dry. But I love this little bulldog. I love the look on his face. He just looks so regal. And if you bought this mold, I can't wait for you to see it. It is so beautiful and I just love all the different little animals that's on it. So now I want to dress up my bottle. Now, in my previous video, my bottles were kind of really frou-frou and girly girl, but this one's going to be a little bit more masculine. So the first mold that I start out with is the IOD Trimmings III mold. And the reason that I choose this one is because the little mold that goes along with it has some little oval shapes. And it reminds me of the buttons on the little dog's shirt. So I'm going to kind of replicate his outfit on the front of this bottle. So I use cornstarch and DOS air dry clay and I rub it, push it all in, and then I go back over it with a credit card. And then I'm going to be putting it on with Tight Bond glue. But for right now, I'm just going to kind of let it lay there for a little bit, because now, look at that. I love it. Now I need to make something to make the bow tie that he has on in the little mold. So this time I'm using the mold called Classic Elements, and it's the far edge, and it's just this little rope. And what I do is I'm going to make several different pieces, and I think I take about 5 or 6 little pieces of the rope and kind of like trim it off with my credit card. And then I'm going to glue it up there, and I'm hoping to make it kind of look like the bow tie that my little bulldog has on. And I put it on with the Tight Bond Thick and Quick, which is the blue and the gray bottle. And it's not going to be exact, but I like the way it turned out. Now, I had laid that mold up there for just a little bit because I didn't want to put it underneath the bow tie. Now I need to make the little knot in the bow tie. So once again, I used some little scraps from that Classic Elements mold. Now, once my molds have set up for just a little bit, I like to go ahead and paint them so that there'll be less chance of cracking. And I use a very soft bristle brush, and I use a very light touch because I don't want to mess up any of that detail on the molds. And I go ahead and get that all painted up, because at this point, I think I'm going to be ready to stop. But then I changed my mind. So then I pulled out my IOD olive crest mold, because when I looked at the picture of that mold, I noticed that the little dog had those little parts of his, I think they're called jowls, Jowls, where, his little skin hangs down. So I decided that I would use the pieces that look like parentheses, and I'm going to put that up at the neck of the bottle, and that's going to kind of mimic his little face and how his little skin hangs down. And then that's mostly going to be on the front of that bottle. And then I think I need to do some more. So this time I decide that I want to make something that looks like, kind of like the collar on his shirt. And that goes back to that Trimmings III mold. There's another little piece in it that matches up. So everything's all dry. And now I take Dixie Belle copper wax, and I just put it all over the trim, and I rub it over with my finger, and then I decide that I'm going to use like a little brush and put it on a little bit more. And this is not something that you are used to seeing me do. I have not done anything that's kind of dark and moody or academia, but I was excited to do this, and I love the way it turned out. And the little cork that I stick that wire into is actually just like a little rubber cork that was in my mother-in-law's basement that I got when she passed away and we were cleaning it out. So what do you think of my sweet little bulldog in this glass decanter or bottle? I'm not real sure, but I love him. I just think he is totally precious. And there's those little pieces right there that kind of mimic his little skin that hangs down and the collar on his shirt. So what do you think? So if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and become part of our family. So let's head on to the next part. And this one is going to be very whimsical. So get ready. So the other day, I was driving down the road, and I was trying to think, how am I going to use that Specimens mold that has all the beetles on it? I couldn't figure out anything to do with it. And so it just kind of hit me. Let's make it not kind of like look like bugs, but make them look like cute little things. And so I decided that I was going to make a wind chime. But let me show you how I end up making it. So because it was kind of late in the game and I didn't have time to go thrifting, I just ordered this off of Amazon. And so this one is actually made from bamboo. And I like it because it's able to paint up real easy, and instead of those metal ones. So there's 8 different little spokes on it, and I paint them all of these different pastel colors. And each of those little bamboo sticks, I paint them all different colors. And then one of the colors, the one at the end, I want it to be kind of like a really pale purple. And so what I end up doing is I had some acrylic paint that was purple, and I mixed it in with white chalk paint to really lighten it up a lot. And you'll see how I incorporate the Specimens mold as we finish up this piece. Now it takes a lot of time, because I've got to wait until, the front of those little bamboo sticks dry, and then I have to flip them over, and I have to paint the other side. And it's a lot of work just to get this done. So I'm going to be making the Specimens mold with resin. Now, I had to use probably maybe 2 to 3 little cups of resin, because I wanted to make all of the pieces in this particular mold. And also, one of the things I like to do when I first get a mold is to go ahead and make some out of resin, and that just kind of gives me an idea of what it's going to look like when I make it with clay later on. So they get all dry. Now, these are not double-sided, and I began to paint them the same colors that I did with those little bamboo sticks. And once again, that takes a pretty good while, because I've got all the different colors. So then I decided with those little bamboo sticks, I didn't want them to just be plain. So with each little bamboo stick, I just painted like a little different design. I painted one with polka dots, and then I painted one with like little flowers, and then I painted one with like little angles, and then one I painted with little hearts, and just did all sorts of different little designs on each one. Because if you've watched Kelly Barlow Creations, one of the things that she likes to do on her projects is to call what she calls stitching. And so she inspired me when I was getting ready to do these different little bamboo sticks. Okay, so all of that's finally painted, and now I'm finally ready for those specimen molds. But I've got to drill a hole in each one of them, because now they're hard. And so I just get out my drill, and I drill a little hole in each one. And I've got that little block of wood sitting on my table so that I won't drill into the actual table. And then I actually have to turn the bugs kind of upside down, because the back side is more flat and the drill goes in just a little bit better. And yes, it makes pretty much of a hot mess, but that's okay. And I love the way they turned out. Now, I'm not going to be matching up the little bugs with the same color of bamboo sticks. I decided that I'm going to kind of mix and match. Now, this is where I kind of struggled. I decided to make the biggest bug the little part that hangs down, that kind of makes everything ring. So now let me tell you how I add the bugs. So I've got that hole in it, and I take some black floral wire, and I take a pretty big long piece, and I run it up through the hole in that bamboo stick. And I twist it around that little thread that it's hanging onto. And then I come down to the bottom, and I take that black floral wire, and I run it through that little hole that I've got. And then I twist that little floral wire around and around several times. And then what it makes is like a little beetle charm on each little bamboo stick. So that was kind of where I was going with all that. And I've actually already decided that, which colors are going to go with which. Now, one thing that I kind of struggled with was that big bug that's going to kind of move a little bit more and make all those bamboo sticks kind of chime. I painted it black, and I just am not really sure if that's the color I want to keep it. So tell me what you think. Plus, the part up at the top that connects all the different wires, I painted that black too. But I just really couldn't come up with a color because I didn't want anything that was too bright. but I just keep working my way through all these little bamboo sticks, running that black floral wire up through the stick and twisting it on, and then coming back down to the bottom and adding the little beetle and twisting that around down at the bottom and making a little charm for each bamboo stick. And this was so much fun to make. So this is kind of what I came up with as I was driving down the road. And I just am so excited. I can't wait for my grandkids to see it. Now, my granddaughters are really afraid of bugs. So I was thinking if I made something that was kind of whimsical and they saw that bugs could be cute and pretty, then maybe they won't be quite so, scared of bugs. But my grandsons, they could care less about bugs. And here's what it looks like when it's all finished. And I just think it's so sweet. Now, there are some bigger beetles and some smaller beetles. And I just kind of picked and choose what I thought that looked good. But the largest beetle in the mold is the little black one, that's going to make it all chime. And I can't wait to hang it up on my back patio for my grandkids to see. I think they're going to like it a lot because we have some wind chimes around the house anyway. And then that's the other side, the other 4 pieces. So what do you think? Do you now like this Specimens mold? If you were kind of on the fence, are you convinced to get one now? Okay, let's keep on with the whimsical. So I had my husband cut this really big board for me, and he cut 14 by 14 because I'm going to make a checkerboard. So I wanted it to look sort of like natural wood, but this is just some of that plywood. So I used the Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain in Natural to kind of make it look more like a natural wood. So I went online and I looked at all the dimensions for a checkerboard, and I realized that each little square needed to be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. So I go through my painter's tape, and I actually use all of my painter's tape, and I have to go and use some blue masking tape later as well. So I'm taping on my first set of squares, and I start with the black one, and then I realize, I better not do that, because I've always heard that when you're doing something like this, it's better to paint that underneath color and let it dry, and then that kind of gives that little edge to it. So then once all that dries, then I go back and I paint them all black, and then that way it doesn't bleed through. Okay, so now I had a viewer to specifically request this, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting molds all around the edges, but I'm going to show you how I miter the corners of it so that the molds don't just kind of like butt up against each other, but look more like a frame. So this mold is the IOD Trimmings I mold, and I have 1 inch all around the edges of this piece of wood. So I looked for the mold that was as close to 1 inch as possible. And I end up making 4 of these different molds. 8, because it's going to need to be a lot longer. And what I love about this mold is that they interconnect so well. So once again, cornstarch, DOS air dry clay, push it down, go back over with the credit card, and just let gravity take its course, and it just kind of falls out. And then I'm going to make a second one. And I love that the IOD sisters make these molds so that you can make them as long as you need to, but you can make it so that it looks very seamless. And I just love the way it turns out. Okay, let's get started with putting the mold down. So this is Tight Bond Thick and Quick, and I kind of go all around the edges, and then I spread it out with a silicone stick. So I start out with 1 piece, and I kind of start with it right in the middle, and the other little piece that kind of matches up to it, I'm going to lay that on the other side of it. And then before I miter the corners, I need to put another side of the molds on, just so that you'll be able to have something to actually miter. So I'm going to take that credit card, and I cut it at an angle, And then that other little piece that's going to hang over it, I cut that kind of hold it up a little bit and cut it at the same angle. And then it looks like a picture frame. See, there you go. It's so easy. And what I like to do is, I don't like to kind of do it both at the same time, because if one of those pieces of clay moves just a little bit, then it might not match up as good. And I just do that with every corner. And I just use that little credit card, and then it's just real easy to kind of nudge it up against each other. And then what I also like to do is I like to take some water in like a little cup and use a paintbrush. And then I rub it over all those little seams, and it gets the clay just a little bit wet. And then that way I like to kind of smudge my finger over those little seams, and then you can't really tell. Now, part of that trim is hanging off the edge, and so I kind of push it down, and then I go and paint all of the trim all around. So now I'm going to be making the checker pieces, but it's going to be a beetle checkerboard. So I actually made a lot out of resin, but then when I realized I needed 24 pieces, oh gracious, that's a lot of resin and a lot of time and a lot of money. So I actually made a lot of them out of clay. And I'm actually going to be giving this to my grandson. So what I like to do when I'm making resin is I always have like a little extra mold off to the side for the little extra bit of resin that you usually have on your cup. And so I'm just going to kind of piece by piece make until I can get all 24 pieces. And then I painted 12 of them with kind of a metallic green, and then 12 of them with metallic blue. And I just think they're so precious. And that checkerboard, I did not know what I was getting myself into, because initially I was thinking about making a tic-tac-toe board. And where I came up with checkerboard, I don't know, but I made it anyway. All right, my last piece goes back to academia, and this is the new stamp called Veranda with the lattice. And oh my goodness, I so love it. So when you get your stamps, you need to sand them really gently with just like a high grit paper, because you don't want to scratch them up too much. And then you want to go both ways, and that just kind of helps the ink to adhere. And now this little shield looking piece, I've had it stained for a while, and I'm going to leave it like that. And then I stamped this Veranda stamp with IOD black ink. And I like to go all the way around the little outside edges, just in case, it could smudge later on. And then I just lay it over on top, hold it really still, and then I just press it all down. And then when I feel like that ink has on there all the way, then I pull that stamp straight up, and I love it. Now, I had made that deer from the invitation only out of resin, so I painted him with the Waverly's chalk paint in the color ink, just like I did my little bulldog, and then I put copper wax on it. And this is one of the labels from the mold called Conservatory Labels. Now, I'm going to be putting the French word for deer inside of that little label. And so I paint it with the black as well. And then I'm going to go back over it with copper wax, because it's got a lot of pretty detail on it as well. Now, I don't have a copper ink pad, so this is just some copper paint that I put on some parchment paper. And I've already got all of those little letters lined up, and I just roll over it very gently. And then I'm going to lay it on top of that little label. And it does smudge just a little bit, but I think it's more because I was using paint. And then I just finish it all off with, I try to get like a little paintbrush and kind of make sure those edges of the little words are a little bit trimmed out good. And then I just take my copper wax and rub all over that. And then I'm going to put my little deer from invitation only down at the bottom. And then I'm going to put the label up at the top. And I just think it is so precious. And this one was easy. My other projects today were pretty complicated, but I like this one, and this one was so fast to make. So what do you think? Oh, I just think that deer is gorgeous, and it's going to be so much fun to use him at Christmas time. And that is what I looked up online, and that is how you spell deer in French. So friends, here are my dark academia pieces that I finished up today. I did my bottle, and then I did the little shield with the deer on it. Now, I'm not going to say the checkerboard is kind of academia, but it's, the black, so I kind of left it in there. And then here is my little Whimsical Specimens mold. I made it into a wind chime, and then I made some little checker pieces for that checkerboard. So friends, in the comments below, tell me what was your favorite. And after I've used the Specimens mold, do you like it done up like this? So I'm super excited to show it to my grandson. But my oldest grandson, he loves to catch bugs, but they don't scare him at all. But tell me, what is your favorite? And let me know, what pieces of the new IOD release did you get? I'm just so in love with all of it. And so I am excited about some projects that I'm going to start working on to get ready for you. So once again, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And make sure to hit the notifications button so that YouTube will notify you when I put up my next video. So I hope you have a wonderful week.